Milo, is that you?
There, I think I got it. George?
Lionel?
George?
Lionel?
Is this working?
Yes.
Is this the last segment since... this might be the last... Is this the first podcast since the last podcast?
You know, let me just check my notes here. I believe it is.
All right. So this is an emergency podcast on the AML network. Only it's going to be like 8 days later.
After the fact.
Yeah, exactly. So our buddy Dave Abeles, who is, I forget what his official title is, but he looks after all the stations for the New Jersey Transit Company. He's a big shot at the old NJT, along with his buddy Rich Winiski, who's incredibly not interesting, and his friend Jack, who refuses to talk to us. So Dave is the guy. So Dave, a couple of weeks ago, I think it was a couple of weeks ago or last Saturday or something, I forget. It might even been last Saturday. He did this really cool Facebook Live thing that went on for about 10 hours of his layout. And it was really, really good. And he's going to do another one. And I said to him, hey, Dave, you want to talk about it before you do the next one? And he is. He's here. Come on in, Dave. Dave?
Hey.
Dave? Oh, there he is.
Good evening, you guys. I figured out how the door worked.
There you go.
Quickly this time. Quickly.
Dave, you've probably never met George, young George. He's on the, if you ever see the fans page, he's our the official FedEx driver of the AML network.
George, it's a pleasure to meet you, sir.
Likewise, Dave. Very happy to meet you.
Yeah. So I thought it'd be fun we'll tell everybody that we are actually recording this just after 11 p.m. on April the 17th because Dave is super busy in his job. So he was about to tell us about his day yesterday on my birthday, by the way. So
happy birthday, buddy.
Thanks. So you had a bad day on my birthday?
I first must wish you a very happy birthday. That's an important caveat here. So thank you for the opportunity to be here a couple days after your birthday.
Yeah.
And it was, you can never predict how these days go. It's this one of the defining characteristics, I think, of the COVID era here is that every day is a little bit different. Some days are a lot a bit different. Other days are just a little bit different, but the bottom line is that it's very difficult to predict day to day what's going to happen. And your birthday ended up being one of the most challenging days I think I've had in my 20-plus year career at NJ Transit.
Wow. Yeah. So can you give us a brief synopsis without going over the limits of what you're allowed to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually, I think it's therapeutic to talk about it a little bit, within the confines of what we're able to touch on. But, it's no secret at this point that, transit is really at a very historic crossroads, notwithstanding the COVID emergency. It was a company that was put together to provide a service that other area services were being provided by with robust budgets, great strategic planning, large operating departments. Companies like Metro North, Long Island Railroad, the New York Metropolitan Transportation Authority. Obviously, Amtrak is a major property owner in the New York metropolitan area, and NJ Transit was, we were a Conrail cast off. In the early 80s, we've talked extensively about that in the past podcasts, and I think that what we do every day when things are normal is pretty Herculean, and there's a lot to be said about the men and the women on the front lines that make that happen. It's an inspiring story. It's exciting to be part of, Really remarkable to watch these people do what they do every day. So routinely, we've got crews, just, as an example, we've got train crews that will start on one line. They'll sign up at, Long Branch or Morrisville, and they'll run into New York with an early morning trip. Then they'll do a break, and then they'll have a round trip on another line out of New York. So they won't go back to their home terminal. They'll go, instead of going back to Long Branch, they'll go to Morrisville, or they'll go to Raritan, or they'll,
right. They go down another line to the
another
end.
line. Then they come back to New York, and they make their final trip home to their original terminal. And all of these things, this is how NJ Transit provides world-class Class 1 service. I mean, an incredibly intricate amount of service, robust service at a premium budget. We're able to do it on significantly less dollars than other agencies spend to do exactly the same thing, or even less in some cases. So when a crisis hits like this, though, so all these threads that we weave, and the way that we put service together when things are fine, and we're doing it on a shoestring budget, we're able to weave things together. You've got managers making decisions in the field and acting with authority, owning their decision, real experts, true professionals. Well, when things go haywire, now, instead of having that intricate web of these fine threads, now you've got to scramble the eggs, and you've got to find a way to cover an alternate service manually without any input from the computer, without any of the aid of having the regular operation, be where you start. So, instead of having your regular routes scheduled, and then someone marks off sick, someone gets in a grade crossing accident, God forbid, so, something happens where you have to change gears and cover a job or two on a one-off basis. Now, no one knows how long this COVID thing is going to last, and we're still scheduling things manually. We're still cleaning stations, which is my responsibility. We're still doing that stuff, manually, because you don't know which station's closed at which point. We're finally today getting to a point where things are a little bit more sound and down to earth. But then, so that's the operation. But one of the challenges of working for a big company is that you've got the operating departments, the people that actually are out there on the front lines delivering the work, and then you've got the rest of the company that's doing procurement, that's buying things, accounts payable, that's paying the bills. You've got human resources who's doing hiring things, or deciding who can be sitting for a certain interview for certain jobs. You've got all of these different departments that are there to support, hypothetically, the operation. Well, one of those departments at NJ Transit is, the capital planning department, the long range view, the guys that are looking at things 10, 20, 30 years out. And because of the turnover we've had at Transit, a lot of them are brand new. And a lot of them, are sending me urgent requests for budgets, for cash flows, for how are you going to handle this for the next 6 months? And it's like, guys,
yeah.
Have you checked the news? Has anybody watched the news in your department lately?
Yeah.
Lionel, I'm pulling my freaking. I'll tell you, I was at wits. I had to tell my boss, I am logging off. I'm leaving my phone at my house when I get home. I'll be back in touch later. And and my wife, Kristen, who's an absolute angel in patience and tolerance and perspective, she says, I think you need to get outside. And I was like, I don't know. And she's like, I think you need to get outside. and so I took her advice, and I got on my bike that has a broken seat, but whatever. And I took myself a ride. I rode up to the railroad tracks in town, took a ride along the railroad tracks, looked at the spikes and the switches, and and spent some time outdoors on a cool spring afternoon. and it was all I could do to just stay focused and sane.
Right.
So yeah, it was a rough day. It was a rough day.
Okay.
We had we've got several employees that have reported positive just in the last couple of days. In my little department alone, we've got the boss of the entire company, not just the railroad, but the whole company, who tested positive. We've got the boss of the railroad, his direct report, my boss's boss. He's positive and in serious condition. So, it's very real when you start to know people that are impacted by this virus.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. I haven't had that experience, but I can well imagine.
Yeah, and it's and it's funny. I mean, we've talked, and George, I'm sure you've heard the interviews, but you and I haven't talked directly about it at this point. But having dealt with loss, family members falling ill and then passing away earlier in my life than I would have chosen. You think there's a naivety, there's a confidence, a false confidence that comes with that, and you think you can deal with adversity and stress in a way that I've dealt with it. I've dealt with worse, and in the end, that's not the case. Like the pain, the challenge that you feel in a moment is very real in that moment, regardless of what you've been through in the past or what you may go through in the future. So, I wish I was better prepared for it. I wish I was able to say, well, we're gonna just sail through it, and it's not going to be a big deal. And
yeah,
that is not the case. We are. This all this happened in the course of 24 hours, Lionel, and and then you got the 8th floor guys are like, oh, well, I need this estimate by tomorrow morning. And it's like, well, guys, you want estimates for capital improvements on 40 stations that I don't even control what you're talking about. And you're talking to me. You want me to give you the estimate?
yeah.
No, guys, no,
Yeah.
no, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So
I'm not now. I'm busy.
So long story short, that was your birthday on NJ Transit.
Well, and I think you make a good point. And we try not. You and I have made an incredible connection personally through the fact that we've both had our struggles with life, and I think you do. I think you get a false a sense of being indestructible, and then something comes along and hits you. Like I think that's my biggest problem right now, is because I think you guys are actually living in some sort of a bubble, because I'm watching it on the news. But, I live in my little, I live 40 miles north. My town, 40 miles north of Toronto, has a few cases. And I live in a little village outside of that city that's 200,000. And I can walk around the neighborhood like as if the world is just as normal as it can be. And I think the problem is you're living in a bubble that you can't see outside of, and we can't. The only thing we're getting is what's on the news, and you're kind of going, well, it's not happening here. How bad can it be? And for you, it's the exact opposite. You're right in the middle of this tornado, basically. You're in the middle of the tornado, and you're thinking, here it comes. I got to figure out a way to get in the storm shelter. It's got to be incredibly difficult for you.
It's difficult, and it's stressful, and it's frustrating. And there's a lot of moving parts at the present moment. And it's, and
I think we also need to include the word scary. I can imagine for you when people around you start getting it and they're testing positive, it must be there must be a certain amount of fear in there of, holy mackerel, this is like I'm in the middle of a science fiction movie. Or not. Did he leave? Did he lose his connection?
No.
Oh.
I'm trying to think of the best way to frame it up, and I'm in mind of my wife who listened to the first interview and has, she really has struggled lately in the last couple of weeks, and she'll hear this at some point and probably chastise me for mentioning it, but she really had a lot of anxiety in the last couple of weeks about me being at work. And
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Right. No, and George, look, you're on the front lines too, buddy. And, this is all stuff we take for granted when things are quote unquote normal. And what we do, we do it. I mean, that's what we're being paid to do. And we move on. And we're in a situation right now where normal isn't normal and where the ordinary is now heroic in some cases. And, I don't know that I or Kristen or anybody in facilities management and stations management in NJ Transit necessarily thought that anything we were doing was heroic. I mean, that
Exactly.
I would agree with that completely.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we do to get paid. It's what we get. And when we get paid, we can hang out with our families. I can buy more cool model trains, and I can, get a new panel for my Onondaga Cutoff. You work for a living, and that's so that you can live outside of work. Like these are constants for people on the front lines. I love what I do. I love the railroad, obviously. I mean, those are clear, but that's not necessarily why you get paid. You get paid because you're delivering a service that somebody else needs you to do.
Well, that's just it too, and I mean, I think that, you and I probably feel the same way. It's the job we were doing before this whole thing started, and it's the job we'll be doing when it's long over,
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's clear. Like, frontline jobs have always been frontline jobs. And in the service economy, that sometimes it's the exception because there's so many jobs that are there to create value, but not necessarily provide a tangible product. You're not you're not delivering a package. You're not moving a train. You're not growing a crop. You're not slicing meat a certain way or what have you. Instead, there's financial markets, there's insurance, and there's banking, and there's a bunch of different service-oriented jobs that don't necessarily require the hands to touch it on a daily basis, so to speak. But those of us that do that stuff, that's par for the course. It's actually not a big deal. It's what we're supposed to be doing.
It's not a big deal, but it's a huge deal. And I mean, on the other side of that coin, I described where I live in my life, but on March 19th, I laid off 8 employees. I helped them get started on getting their unemployment, and now I'm working on getting my small business loan. But in the meantime, I'm going to each one of them saying, now, do you have enough money for groceries? I'm making sure that their power's not getting tied off and they got enough money for groceries. And I got one guy that just is too proud to admit that, he's starting to struggle. And it's like, I go to the grocery store and I buy a $200, gift card, and I take it back. And I'm like, come on, Jeff, come on, buddy. And it's like, everybody's got that, which is completely foreign to me. And, and I'm filling out the forms to get my small business loan. And I'm thinking, and I'm thinking I don't need the money, except all of a sudden I do need the money I need the money if I'm going to continue to make sure these other people don't run out of food and groceries. And it's just, the whole thing is bizarre,
It's bizarre, but I'll tell you, it touches my heart in a big way, Lionel, that as a boss, you're out there looking out for your people and making sure that they're taken care of. That's leadership. That's what management should be. And if everybody had a manager like that, we'd all have a lot less to worry about. And so my hat's off to you. That's and it's not like you don't have pain. It's not like you don't struggle with this whole idea. So it really is a remarkable time right now. We're all going to look back on this because we're going to get through this.
100%.
No question. But we're going to look back on this and we're going to say, man, what a fascinating test of institutions. What a fascinating test of management prowess and of operational priority. And I hope that the more progressive managers are going to be able to look at it and say, boy, I really feel thankful. I feel thankful that we got, that we had a commitment to quality and that we had partnerships and we kept our employees involved. But, I'm really disappointed in the fact that we lost focus on leadership, or we lost focus on commitment, or, all the buzzwords. But the bottom line is that kind of self-reflection is very healthy. And I do believe that there is a silver lining that will come out of this absurdity and this craziness right now, where, we're going to, I don't know. I think we're going to be able to make things better. I really believe that as hard as this is, and as tragic as it is, I mean, every death in any case is a real tragedy. It's a fatal tragedy for the family that's dealing with that. And I don't mean to take anything from any of that. I mean, that's, and I know it firsthand right now because, one of the first deaths on NJ Transit for this whole COVID thing was a conductor that I knew pretty well on my line, my little Raritan Valley line here that runs through my town. He's a guy that met my kids when I took my kids to work. He's a guy that took us on our little Raritan Valley line pub crawl. Now, I don't think we talked about that line. We have to talk about that at some point.
We will.
The Raritan Valley line pub crawl. We can add that to the list of things we haven't talked about yet. But this is a guy that a couple of weeks ago I saw him. I shook his hand. I asked him how he was doing. He was doing good. His kids are fine. My kids are fine. It was so much fun seeing them come to work. You got to do that again. Those kids, they're going to grow up faster than Dave. And now Mr. Joe Hansen, God bless his soul, he's passed away.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing people have to realize, and from my own experience with cancer, is that there's going to be scars. Like, I know we're all going to come through it, and some of us aren't. Some of us aren't going to make it up the hill. And just as you talked about your friend, the conductor, some of us don't make it up the hill, and a lot of us that do make it up the hill, there's going to be scars, and you're kidding yourself if you don't think there is. And if there was one piece of information I could give, and I don't really have, I'm kind of embarrassed to say this, but I think it might help somebody. It's like, I was really disappointed in myself in how scared I was when I first started on my cancer journey. I mean, like, basically they're telling me good luck, and I was pretty disappointed. I kind of wanted to John Wayne the thing out of there. And the first 6 months, I wasn't anywhere near that. But, you need to dig in and try to be as brave as you can and accept the fact that when it's all over, there's going to be some scars. And that's okay. It's okay that you're scared. It's okay that, it was tougher than you thought. It's, and just when it's over, you just got to accept the fact that it made you into the person you are. That's all. It just turns you into the person you are is a product of the events of your life. And even though it's a difficult thing, I mean, it's crazy, Dave, but I mean, for you and I to hook up at this point, I think it'll just increase our friendship tenfold as the years go by.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. I don't think I could have said it better. And I think it's a privilege. It's an absolute honor to be able to, I mean, you can't make this up. I read all your columns in the late 90s and 2000s, Lionel. I love the wittiness, even back then. And this is Kalmbach. And I write for Kalmbach, which is a privilege and an honor in and of itself. But Kalmbach doesn't. No, they don't rock the boat very much.
Yeah, they don't care for witty too much.
It's not their style, and I respect that as a writer for them. I feel honored to be having this conversation. But you found a way to weave that in, and as a kid, as I was, my teens and 20s at that age. I mean, I'm a child. I was born in the 70s. Child of the 80s, and by the time you were writing for Kalmbach, I was in really a very formative time for me in the hobby, and I felt a kinship with you just through your writing in Model Railroader as an associate editor. It was, I always looked forward to that column. I'll tell you what, and the ALS and like the way you guys did things. It's like, Lionel, I can't wait to get you down here for the first operating session. We are going to have so much fun.
I'm not gonna promise 100%, but I've already kind of promised myself that the first operating session after this is over, I'm coming to it. I'm coming to when the Onondaga Cutoff comes back to life. I want to be there.
Well, and you've got a spot. You got a permanent spot. You can come here anytime you like. And as you know, we've been doing some our first ever quote unquote virtual operating sessions. That's
what I wanted to talk to you about. So, George, did you get a chance to watch any of his Facebook Live video?
I actually did, and it was extremely entertaining.
It was very, very entertaining, but it may be the longest Facebook Live video I've ever seen in my life.
You guys are kind, because after when I started to watch it, I was like, "Oh my God, what the heck was I doing?" and then I watched it, and it's like, "Oh my God, that's a terrible video." Oh, what are you doing? I have to admit, and then the last one, my phone was so bewildered, so screwed up, that it wouldn't even turn horizontal. So I did it vertical and then got confused. And it's actually a little embarrassing to look at.
No way. It was an excellent presentation. I mean, you must have had your phone on some of the time on a tripod or something, did you?
I did. Well, I call it the iPhone.
The iPhone.
iPhone. So I created a little. I used a piece of masonite that left over from my backdrop project all those years ago, and a couple scraps of wood. I experimented with a couple of configurations, but I glued together a little, almost a 3-inch by 5-inch masonite piece is a base plate with some scraps of wood on the top. And it's set up so that you can slide the phone vertical or horizontal into the slot between the pieces of wood that are glued to the base plate. And then I can set that base plate any place, and the phone is 90 degrees vertical and it's stable. I can set it on the layout.
Right.
So instead of having a little micro tripod and a bean bag like you see some of these high-tech guys do, I was like, so I fabricated this thing, and then I took a Sharpie marker and called it the iPhone, because it's what I use to foam on my layout. If I'm it's sometimes you just got to foam. You got to watch trains go by and just enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah,
that's great, Dave.
Yeah.
So tomorrow night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time, and I don't think this podcast will be on the air by then, but hopefully there'll be some more.
Well, you know what we're going to do at the end of this podcast? We're going to do like 5 minutes, and I'm going to put it on the air tomorrow morning so that you're going to get some. So we'll give as much notice to people as they can. They'll automatically go to their phone.
Lionel, you're too good to me, buddy. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Hot off the presses, they might say.
Holy moly, that's as hot as it gets.
Yeah, and then and then this one will be on April the 27th. So this will be after your second try. But I mean, George. So Dave sends me a text saying I'm going to do it again tomorrow night. And I'm sitting there looking at my phone, and I'm thinking, should I say anything, or should I keep quiet? Or, George, when you're having those 5 or 10 minutes where you're trying to think to yourself, I know him pretty well, but I've just got to know him. So is he really up for me giving him any advice, and blah, blah. And I'm going back and forth. And finally I said, hey, that's great. Would you like a little constructive criticism? And I got, right away, yeah. So I said to him, basically, I said, your video was awesome. It was great. I loved it. But it was like a it was like the Gone with the Wind. It just went on and on and on. And I'm thinking, no man can do this on a regular basis. Like, you need to cut it down somehow.
It was the Titanic of Model Railroad live stream.
Yeah. It was the Titanic of Model Railroad videos. Yeah, it was massive.
And massive. And what the thing that suffers most with a massive video is the quality. And I really appreciate everybody that chimed in and all the comments and the positive press. This thing has been seen over 2,000 times. Guys, look, this is a 25 by 35 roughly basement. I'm a nerd that loves trains. I love people. I enjoy I never 2,000 views in a couple days. What are you kidding? Like that's so I feel very, very honored and humbled and just thankful for all of this stuff. But I can tell you that the quality stinks.
Oh no,
it's not a good video.
It was a great video, and it's one of the best home layout live. Considering you'd never done it before,
right? I've never done it before, so I learned a lot. And your comments, Lionel, were golden. And look, one thing I want to be very clear about is that I really feel that this hobby is best done with you have to trust the camaraderie and the characters that are here to help people that want to be part of solutions to help you grow. They present themselves very early and they present themselves often, and you have to trust that camaraderie. Someday I have a couple articles in queue at Model Railroader, and one of them is about camaraderie, and it's about, the product is greater than the sum of the parts. The old school philosophy, where if you trust the experts to be experts, you're going to end up with something that's greater than you could have created yourself. And the OC is no exception to that. Without Jack, without Rich Wisniewski, without Nick Anshant and Chris Lee and Alex Lang and Al Tillotson and all of these people that really just jump in with 2 feet and contribute their excitement, their passion, their enthusiasm for their aspects, not the whole pie, but whatever they consider to be dear. Like hey, would you mind if are you kidding? Do it. I appreciate you asking, but do it. And so a good chunk of what you see with the Onondaga Cutoff is stuff I never would have thought about. Or if I did think about it, it would be 10 years from now. But by letting these people come in and take some ownership, they're able to fall in line with the vision that I've got for what I want the railroad to be. And they're able to jump in. And so a lot of these guys jumped in about the video. A lot of these guys said, well, you should think about this. And, it was great live, but when I watched it in rerun, there was a lot of jerky camera movement. Maybe you should think about putting it on a tripod. And, there was a couple comments you probably should have acknowledged right away, and you took too long to do that. And so Rich Wisniewski will be texting me on my wife's phone tomorrow night. Jack will be dispatching again. And the three of us have come up with sort of a cadence of operations, which trains, we're going to run the next couple trains in the sequence. So it'll be early morning on the OC. And, by allowing them to be involved, Jack has already sent me what the power is going to be. He's telling me how things are going to be set up. Rich is going to do some research into the train symbols. He's going to figure out, a couple things I can say about each train, and that maybe he can contribute via text, as he comments on the Facebook video. And this is Rich and Jack doing this on their own. Like I didn't direct it. Again, the idea to start the whole thing was Rich's. The first couple of the first videos you guys saw, 2.5 hours of chaos.
but okay, fair enough.
Yeah, let George. Yeah, go ahead, George.
I was just gonna say though, Dave, and don't get me wrong, I know Rich and Jack were instrumental in getting off the ground, but for whatever it was, 2,000 people is 2,000 people. For your first live stream, that's no small achievement. Like, let's be real here. No, you did pretty good.
I can't. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled, and I'm finding myself struggling with watching. Am I going to get 2,000 again? Am I going to get 2,000? It's like, Dave, God, calm down. That's not why we're doing this. Why we're doing this is because it's fun. And we want to communicate that fun and that energy as best we can through Facebook Live. what I did not expect from the first video were, I don't want to use any names, but I got 7 or 8 emails or Facebook messages in the first 48 hours after that video went live, and all of those were people that are dealing with tragedy right now.
Right.
There was someone that lost his job. He's not sure how he's going to pay the rent. He's really upset, but he was looking forward to seeing the video. I got fired on Friday, and Friday morning I saw your announcement. I was excited about it. Friday afternoon I got fired.
Wow.
And
Jeez.
And all I could think about Friday night was watching your video Saturday.
Yeah.
Another guy. So in the midst of all this, like, my wife and I were having difficulties and she left me.
Really?
This is honest to God, I got an email. And so I'm alone in my apartment. I'm not really sure what to do, but I was thrilled that you were having a live video. I've always loved your layout. Can't wait to see it. Thank you so much.
Wow.
I mean, guys,
I think my job on this planet is one of my jobs on this planet is to explain to people like you what an impact you have. You know what the problem with talking to Dave is, George?
What's that?
It sounds like a lovin' from the 70s. You know.
Oh my God!
You end up making me say stuff that I would never say on the podcast, but it's like people like you, and I've said it to you before, but people like you help to push the human race forward, and I have come to realize through my little adventures that it's important that you grasp that so that you can when you're holding on to that and you realize, okay, we're not changing the world, but in our little tiny way, we're helping to push the human race forward. And it's important that you grasp that because you're making a difference, even if you only made a difference. And, it's that classic old saying that people, if all I do in my whole time on the planet is make a difference in one person's life, I can leave happy. Well, in fact, you're having that opportunity and you want to, that's what I was trying to say to you in the text. You don't need a big, long video. You just need to be Dave, and it can be 40 or 45 minutes long, and you will accomplish the same thing.
Well, and that's again, your words mean a lot to me. It's someone I've looked up to since the 90s, since I've been reading your columns, and since I found the podcast, thanks to Rich. And without a dad, I mean, my dad passed away a couple of years ago. His brother passed away a year after that. His cousin was gone before either of them. So my whole patriarchal structure is gone. I mean, it's I'm glad I've got wonderful memories of all of it, and it carries me. But I do find myself craving in a philosophical way, craving that masculine guidance. That how do you make a decision, and how do you so. Your words mean a lot to me, Lionel, and I appreciate it. And I'm sorry that I always seem to take the podcast in this philosophical direction.
So, all right.
Hey, Lionel.
Yeah.
I want to gloss over this. I just want to point out that what Dave was really saying is that you provide masculine guidance.
Yeah. And I'm a little concerned that he should maybe be aiming a little higher than looking up to me.
Well,
you just lift that scope up a little higher there, Dave.
Go 45 degrees.
Well, yeah. You tell me who else I should be looking at, and then we'll do that, Lionel. That sounds good. Otherwise, I'm going to stay just where I am.
All right. So let's tell it. So what are the improvements that are going to be? So you're going to have Rich. He's going to be texting. Actually, when you said that to me, I thought, oh man, this is going to be a scream because he's going to be trying to run trains, looking at his reading text from his wife. This is getting better and better as we go along.
Well, here the funny thing was, so Saturday night, I had my old iPhone, which is what I use for texts. It's what I use for model train control, right? I mean, that's the Y throttle.
Right.
and is what I use for Facebook for the most part. I mean, everybody uses Facebook on their device these days. So I had my phone in my hand, trying to do all of that in one capsule. And admittedly, I realized quickly that I had to use a secondary device to control the train. So then it was just the texts and the Facebook video on the phone. But I was trying to control trains with another hand and comment as things popped up on the Facebook video.
Right. And so what you say you do text on your old iPhone?
Well, I had texts and the Facebook
on your old one. I got you.
And I thought I'd be able to do both of those things while running trains with the other hand. And I was sorely mistaken. It was a mess.
So now instead of your old iPhone, you're going to use your wife's iPhone, and this is somehow going to improve the matter?
Well, at least then I can see the texts. Because Jack and Rich and Alex, Jack and Alex Lang, who lives out in Pittsburgh, and another soul brother of mine, brother from another mother, as they say. He was dispatching the first trick, and then Jack came in for the second trick with the remote dispatching that we were doing on the OC for that Facebook Live video. And so we set ahead of time. We set up a text group with the four of us: Jack, Alex, Rich, and myself. And so they're all texting on this group, and I can't see it because it's my phone's videotaping.
Right. So okay. So what's going to be different then? Tell us what's going to
be different is that instead it's going to be a shorter session. So Jack will dispatch, Rich will be chiming in, and I'll of course be running things out of the basement here, in the COVID era. So the text messages will come through with my wife's iPhone, Rich's, and Jack's iPhones. So on one side, I'll have my wife's iPhone where it's just text messages on the operations, the management list, so to speak. My iPhone will be on the tripod, so not bouncing around, not wandering. It'll be on the tripod where I can pivot with the train. And I'll be using a throttle in my other hand to actually control the trains. So I'll have a little basically a workstation setup. So the way that's going to happen is that I'm going to have one spot. The tripod's going to stay in one spot. We're going to watch trains from milepost 279 on the Onondaga Cutoff tomorrow night.
Okay.
We're not going to go to the island. We're not going to go to Onondaga Yard. We're not going to go to CP 282 or 277. We're going to sit right at the dairy farm. We're going to watch trains from milepost 279, period. And so if people have to wait 5 or 10 minutes for a train to come, well, when you're rail fanning, that's what you do.
Yeah, and I think you're going to find that as you do this each time, because it sounds like something you're probably going to enjoy, and even when life returns to normal, which it will, it sounds like it's something you probably will want to continue. So as you do it each time, you'll get more and more refined. You'll find different, you'll try this and you'll try that, and this will work and that doesn't, and that sort of thing. All right.
Well, and one of Jack's ideas was to, we certain trains in any railroad's freight schedule will work certain points. Not every train works every yard. Certain trains bridge certain yards, but at Onondaga Yard, in our modern freight schedule we have, 1994 freight schedule, we run COSE, which is Columbus to Selkirk. It's an eastbound train, and he doesn't pick up in Onondaga, but he does set off, and that's a daily thing. So every morning at 5:30 or 6 in the morning, sun's coming up, and COSE routinely comes into the west end of Onondaga, talks to the yard master, comes down the North Runner. He'll make a set out someplace in the yard as dictated by the yard master. Tie down the handbrakes on the rear end of the train. Then after he makes a set out, he'll take his locomotives and whatever's going with it that came from the train back to the train wherever it's tied down with its handbrakes, couple the air up, charge the air, and then head east with 11, 14, 15 less cars because he's just made a set out in Onondaga. So Jack said, boy, if you want to be ambitious on Saturday, maybe we could have COSE work, and that way people can see runarounds, and and I'm thinking to myself, my fourth arm.
Yeah.
And Jack's like, no, you can have Teddy run it. I'm like, Jack, it's going to be 9:30 at night. Teddy's 5. He's not.
Yeah.
Our kids. I someday I can't wait, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe a little bit.
That'll tick Kristen off pretty good if I keep my son up until 11 p.m. on a Saturday night. So the bottom line is that we all of us agree, Jack, me, Rich, Alex, the whole Wisdom Keeper crowd, where we've been talking about this in the last couple of days. Look, this time, let's keep it to 45 minutes, up to an hour at max. Let's run 6, 7, 8, 9 trains.
Oh, wow.
Whatever we can.
You're gonna run that many trains, eh?
Well, it's a 3-to-1 fast clock, and so if I can figure out a way to, the early morning was very, very busy on the Chicago line. You had SEIN if it was running late. SYBU, you had a TV 550 or a TV 80, depending on the day, but you definitely had a COSE. You definitely had TV 6. You had TV 77. There's a large number of trains that would move right around dawn, and it's actually a good opportunity to just watch trains on the OC. So because where we are in the schedule, and that's what we've been doing, even last weekend, we ran a little piece of the schedule. We just turned the lights on. It should have been 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
None of this is fun when it's all dark, unless you're actually down here. And boy, it's a lot of fun when you're down here. It's it's a lot when the lights go off. But railroading at night is a lot. And George, I'll bet you that working FedEx at night is a lot. Like, anytime you're doing stuff at night, the world changes a little bit when it's part of your regular job.
The entire dynamic is almost flipped on its head.
Yeah. And the people you meet are not the people you meet in the daytime.
Nope.
It's a different cast of characters at night.
That is absolutely correct.
Well, let me ask you this, George. Have you ever recorded a podcast for thousands, tens of thousands of people at 12:00 at night?
I have, as a matter of fact.
You have? Was I there?
Yes. That is to say, you were recording it, and I was present.
Oh, yeah, right. We were doing the fans or something. Yeah. Just play along, George. You were supposed to say no.
No.
Yeah, there you go. Too late.
Oh, see, but no. Hey. That's I would argue that's well done. Well done, George.
George.
I'm sitting here staring at the wall, going.
Since when do we answer the questions with the exact information on the AML? Come on.
This is true.
Well,
it's a nation, right? It's a nation.
It's a nation. Okay. So, all right. So you're going to have how are you going to have some sort? So I hope you're going to tell Rich Winiski to ask my questions first.
Well, I do believe that you and he may have talked before.
Yeah.
I would argue that maybe you should send him a little note. Say, hey, Rich, here's the things that I want to hear.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he'd respond to that, Lionel.
I'm thinking I should just be part of the crowd. And if he doesn't pick me out of a crowd, I think that kind of tells me everything I need to know.
I'm pretty sure that if you jump on, I'm pretty sure it'll be very clear.
So
I can tell you, Dave, we will be sitting watching tomorrow intently for recognition.
Look, I mean, seriously, your support means a great deal to me, and I'm very thankful. I really do appreciate it. I mean, I love what we're doing on the OC. The fact that it's become so ingrained with so many good friends that happen to work for transit on top of that. The fact that Jack and I are still working together after having met, 30 years ago in 5th grade, like, it's the whole thing. Talk about living the dream. This is the dream. And so it's important to remember that even in times of COVID crisis and management crisis at transit and all the frustrating things we're dealing with and labor strife and budget cuts and all of this stuff that can quickly become very toxic. Jack said it very well. We actually, I haven't told you this one yet, Lionel. we had I actually had the idea, I guess about a year ago. Jack's grandmother, who's passed on now as well, she lived in Cranford, New Jersey, which is a town about 20 miles out of New York City, much further east than me, and more suburban. So very densely populated, a lot of houses. The only open space is really parks or swamps or what have you. But one of the early rail fanning experiences I had in 5th grade is that, Jack and I got talking, and Jack's like, "Oh, my grandmother lives really close to the Conrail main line in Cranford." So my parents and Jack's parents coordinated it so that Jack would come to Syracuse with me for the first time to go up and meet the Dean side of the family and spend the day trackside on the Chicago line. And likewise, later in the summer, I would go down and spend 4 nights at Jack's grandma's house in Cranford with Jack, and we could watch trains for 4 days there. So we would bike down to the railroad tracks at, well before dawn, early in the morning, and we just had a blast. So last year, it'd been a while. Jack's been very busy at work. It's just been crisis after crisis after crisis. And I said, Jack, let's set aside a Saturday morning where you and I can get up before dawn. Let's meet at Cranford at Central Avenue or Centennial Avenue, one of the 2 spots we used to watch trains at when we were kids. And let's get bacon cheeseburgers for breakfast from the local Greasy Spoon, the 24-hour diner, like we used to. Let's just spend a day watching trains. He's like, that's a great idea. So we did it. We debated dates for a couple of weeks, and then we finally pinned down a date. We went ahead and did it. And it had just a wonderful time. I mean, yeah, it's all the same GEs up front. It's not. There's a lot of graffiti on the cars, which has never been my bag. Like some trains with one engine up front and DPU in the back, which is not my bag. A lot of things that change, and as rail fans, we tend to gripe. So, but whatever. We had a great day, good camaraderie, long talking about stuff going on at work and how his wife and my wife were doing and the kids and all, a lot of family talk and planning for operating sessions, talking about the OC. A couple of days after that, Jack sent me an email and he said, "Man, that was old school. That was the kind of day," and I'm paraphrasing, "that was the kind of day that makes you realize that everything we do today is exactly what we would have dreamed to be doing when we first started to watch trains together. So glad that we made it happen." And he went on and said a few other things, but I'm going to carry that energy for a long time. I like Jack doesn't say much. He's an introverted guy. He's not out in front. He's not the kind of guy that's going to make waves by, going in front of a group of people and saying outlandish things. He's data driven. He's brilliant, and I have the utmost respect for the way he approaches things. And so when he talks, it usually carries a lot of weight for me. And I still think about that. I mean, it's
Sure.
Even with all the crap that we're going through right now, Lionel, I mean, even with all the crap we're going through, I don't know that I'd choose it differently. I mean, I'm working for one of the most important transit companies in the world.
Yeah.
And even in times of strife, we are urgent. We are operating. We are essential. Like, this is railroading. And that's
You're getting it done. You're digging in. That's my dad, World War II guy. That was one of his favorite phrases. He used to always say to me when I was getting frustrated, or he'd say, "It's time to dig in, kid. You got to dig in and do the job." That's
why we're here.
Yeah. Because somebody's got to do it, and you just got to dig in. I had a great idea. I just had a great idea. 2 things I'd like to say. Number one, you think Jack's quiet and is a kind of an introvert. Dave, around you, everybody's an introvert because nobody gets a chance to talk.
Hey, shut up, George. Come on, George. Give me a break here. Give me a break. We're just meeting each other. No, I'm just pulling your leg.
And
I know, really, I have been thoroughly enjoying just taking it all in.
and the
You're
other
very kind.
Yeah, the other idea. Hello, is my mic off? The other idea I had is let's stop right now, and we'll take a page from Rich Winitsky's book. And he told me after a crisis, you always have a hot wash. Is that what it's called?
That's correct.
Yeah,
that's correct.
So I think what we should do, you and I, on Monday or Sunday or Monday night, and George, you're welcome to join us. I think you and I should finish. We've done 56 minutes. We should do another 30 minutes about how it went, rather than give people just the beginning. We'll do another 30 minutes about how it went. They're going to get it before.
Yeah, do a follow up.
Yeah,
perfect.
And we'll broadcast this on April 27th, so they'll get the before. We've heard all about the before and your big plans. So George, you and I will make notes about his big plans, and we'll see on when we do the hot wash. We'll see what the shakeout was.
The pad is here, and I have been scribbling, so we are good to go.
Yeah, exactly.
Boy, if I had known it'd be that kind of a party, I would have changed my tune.
Yeah.
Oh, believe me, Dave, I'll be watching.
Yeah.
Carefully.
George, I think you and I are going to get along just fine. This is great.
I really think we are.
So Dave, because this is the end of a segment, and I know you will listen to a lot of the podcast, but I know you're busy and you don't remember everything. Do you know what you have to say at the end of a segment?
I do know what I need to say. Here we go.
All right, go. He doesn't know, George. He has no idea.
That was truly disappointing.
I'm waiting,
George. He has no idea, George.
I stand corrected. I thought there was a lead-in from the host.
You know what it is, don't you, George?
I do.
Take it away, George.
Subway chime, go.
Okay, so now we've just we managed to work our way through getting Dave to say subway chime go. Or somebody said it. I forget who said it, George. Was it you or Dave?
No, we both said it, actually.
It was only just a couple of seconds ago, so I don't know why I can't remember.
These things happen.
Hey, it's the magic of podcasting. It's like a couple of seconds ago, but in reality, it's 24 hours later, 36 hours later, and Dave has had his, I guess we did it, it's like 48 hours later. Dave has had his second Facebook Live. He's here to tell us all. This is the shakedown from that event. So, Dave, have you recovered yet?
Yeah. It was a thrill. It's amazing what a little bit of experience can do to teach you how to improve upon things. You know, if you're open to looking at how things can be better in anything you're involved in, which is something I try and do in the different parts of my life, but especially with the model railroading stuff. And especially with, either podcasting or Facebook Live, this is all stuff that I'm relatively new to. But the session went off really, really well. I think taking some advice of keeping it a reasonable length, which was the evil overlord had suggested that as a piece of friendly advice, which was well taken. And we had some other suggestions from, keeping the camera more steady and maybe you should focus on one shot or you tried to do too much. Some good, honest criticism. And I think we were able to circumvent a bunch of that stuff and make it work. So that was really exciting.
Yeah, it seemed to go off kind of without a hitch, I thought, last night.
Yeah, I think it was pretty smooth. I mean, in hindsight, I can look back at it and say, well, one of the curious things about Facebook when it comes to the model railroad community is that it's still a public page. The Onondaga Cutoff is still a public page. And as a result, when I shared this on my personal page and of course on the OC page, thanks to George, it was on the Modeler's Life Facebook page, and I forwarded it to a bunch of the groups I'm part of in the model railroad world. And it sort of takes on a life of its own because people that aren't railroad people see me posting this stuff online and they say, oh, Dave Abeles, he never goes live. Like, he's not even on Facebook all that much. I mean, except for kid pictures. I wonder what he's doing. So my neighbors showed up. My family shows up. People from Syracuse that had nothing to do with the marching band friends from high school and college showed up. Another guy who isn't as familiar with computers as we are. He mistakenly shared it live on his page. His whole family saw him live, and they all showed up. So we had this, there was at one point there was over 150 people watching, which was more than last time. I didn't expect that for the second time. I thought the shock value would have worn off a little bit. And these, people, you've got comments on this thing from people that they have never seen a model railroad before.
Right.
And then you've got, comments from Bruce Wilson, Lionel Strang, George, my buddies who are regular on the OC, like people that are total veterans with the hobby. And so as I'm sitting here filming this thing, and at this point it's all on my little cell phone, it really is pretty remarkable to watch all these comments come in, but you don't have time or the wherewithal to respond to them, especially when you're also trying to run the trains. Because we're, it's COVID-19. We're social isolating to a degree that we can handle, and then distancing for the parts that we can't isolate. But that means that there's no operating sessions, which, as we talked about a little bit earlier in the show here, is exactly why we're doing some of this Facebook Live stuff. Is it's a surrogate operating session, so that there's a vicarious experience out there for people that are model railroad operators, either on the OC or someplace else. And we can, maybe some of those guys can get their little fix, get a little excited and enjoy themselves, sit back, relax, take their mind off the news and watch some trains roll by. But it was a real curveball to see these comments come in and be like, so one guy's asking, what's the fastest train? And have you been on it? And it's like, I mean, how do you even begin? What's the fastest train? I mean, you mean on this model railroad? Do you mean in general ever? I mean, it's a good question, but it's a question that I didn't expect to have to answer on a model railroad operations Facebook Live video.
Right. Yeah, because it's open to everybody in the whole world. Right.
And so, as I've all, look, I mean, I'm lucky to work for the railroad and to work with a bunch of very good people, to have grown up loving the hobby. I've got a lot of history in the hobby, just my own personal world. I've always loved trains. And so, I've been familiar with them and their community for quite some time. But this whole idea now, and Lionel, you talk about this all the time on your podcast, the power of social media to reach almost everyone that has electricity, electricity and a basic internet connection. And you can talk to, 3 billion other people at any given point.
And it's really electricity and a basic cell phone connection.
Right. There you go. I mean, it's pretty rudimentary, and it's in most of the world at this point, even some of the really far out areas. So the potential of these Facebook videos, virtual operating session or not, it really is an interesting and exciting opportunity to reach new people. I mean, I can tell you that my neighbors, these are guys I drink beers with every once in a while. Certainly when times are more normal, our families hang out, our kids go to school together. And, one grew up in Western Pennsylvania. The other one grew up here in New Jersey, but neither one of them ever gave a hoot about trains. I mean, they noticed them, but
right.
it wasn't interesting. And they were on the entire session last night.
Wow.
The whole thing. The whole thing. Lionel, it took me a week. The first session was choppy, but it was fun. It was a good opportunity to learn, and we had a lot of fun. And we ended up with about 2,000 views on those videos, which I was amazed at. This one, it's 24 hours later, and it's already over 2,000 views.
I know. I saw that.
That's awesome.
I looked at it just a little while ago, and I said, "Holy moly!" Like, again, I thought some of the power of it was just a novelty last week. Then it turns out now there's people that are really looking forward to this and enjoying it when it comes out. And what a privilege to be able to offer that in a time like this, to be able to offer something that people grab onto a little bit and really look forward to.
Do you think there was anything else that helped propel it forward?
No, nothing at all.
Well, I mean, Dave, you know what, right? The next time you do this, the way things are going, the next time you do this, you're going to have to be prepared for somebody to ask you, "Hey, Dave, what's your thought on mag lives?"
right.
The rate things are going.
At this point, and hey, if that gets more people in the hobby, it's great. But all kidding aside, Lionel, your support of my little, my railroad down here and my little community of model railroaders here in New Jersey, the way that you've gotten Rich and I to laugh and open our minds a little bit to see how things are, the bigger world that we're participating in, it means a great deal to me. And so my hat's off to you. Thank you very much. This is a lot of fun.
You had 636 comments and, like you say, 2,000 views. Like, man, you had a ton of participation last night.
It's a lot of fun to see that kind of participation. And a bunch of people emailed people that are on Facebook and they pressed the wrong link, or I wasn't able to get it to sound. And it's like, well, yeah, did you turn the volume up on your computer? Oh yeah, I'll do that next time. And yeah, okay. So it's pushing. What's cool is that it's taking advantage of existing platforms, public platforms, and people that would never be on Facebook. Well, they're taking a look at it because it's got something that they're looking for. And again, that's the power of this is really, I'm sort of still wrapping my head around the potential.
Yeah.
And so you've helped lead me down that mindset, where you have to sort of limit yourself because there's nothing else to limit you.
Exactly.
So, it's good input, and I'm always open to any comments. So please keep them coming because I'm going to learn a lot here, and that's a healthy thing.
So I see you put up when you turn to the left to look under the bridge, the road bridge from the turn coming towards, I guess you're coming towards milepost 279, was it?
Yeah, you're looking Railroad West. So that's an eastbound train coming around the corner, away from Onondaga Yard, past CP 280 and on its way down to 277 and eventually towards Selkirk. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you notice that, George? I got it right out of the box. I said, what, you're looking west, and I had it right.
I know, but I expected no less.
Yeah. So I see you put up like a white sheet, to kind of kill the background would just be a white sheet instead of the background of the basement.
Yeah, it was. I tried to put up a darker sheet and it just looked way too dark. So I found a gray sheet instead. And my wife, she's very patient, as I'm running around all afternoon looking at different color sheets from the drawers to try and figure out a new backdrop. Because one of the things I noticed in the first video was that shot, it shows a lot of the stuff I have in that corner. That's the corner that looks back towards from the angle the camera was at. Looks back towards the dispatcher center, the trainmaster's office, and the stuff that's on the walls there. So I've got, a fellow named Doug Watts, who's they call themselves the ex-cons, people that used to work for Conrail.
Right.
So he's an ex-con going way back, and he had a job at the headquarters in Philadelphia, and he's got a couple treasures that he was able to hold on to when they closed that headquarters down and when Conrail was merged into CSX and Norfolk Southern in 1999. So Doug graciously has given me a couple real gems, and three of them actually, they hang on the walls here. And it's the corporate vision statement, the corporate mission, and corporate objectives that hung in the boardroom at Conrail's headquarters.
Wow.
And the facilities management guys were throwing it all out as Conrail was broken up. And, Doug saw him on the cart that was going to the trash, and he said, you guys mind if I take these? No, take the frames too. That's less weight for us to carry. So Doug took them and he had them in his basement. And last year at an operating session, he had emailed me ahead of the session. We always have a safety briefing before we get operating, which hopefully you guys will come down and experience one of these days soon. When things get a little more.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there going to be is there going to be a lot of work to do this? Like a safety briefing?
Well, you got to know where the exits are. You got to know what to do if the lights go off.
Mm-hmm.
You got to know what to do if there's where the fire extinguisher is, the basic stuff. We do it even for regular meetings on the railroad, we do safety briefings every single day. It's when they say safety first, they mean it. And it sounds sort of corny and silly, but every once in a while, there's been 2 instances in my 20-year career at transit where someone in a meeting had a heart attack.
Wow.
And we have defibrillators out by the elevators. And because of the safety briefing we do at the meetings, people knew where. I wasn't in the meetings, but somebody ran and got the kit and saved a life.
Right. Yeah.
So I take safety seriously here too, especially because you turn the lights off. it definitely gets, it's not a standard operating experience when the lights go down and all you have is the layout lighting and some safety lighting along the floor. So yeah, we do it. It's nothing complicated. We do a safety briefing while everybody's having their first beer.
Okay.
So it's
right.
that kind of safety briefing.
So no
worries.
So how did you get the idea for the sheet?
Well, I was looking at my videos from last week and I noticed that my focus goes to the trains, but I started to realize that other people were watching this thing. And I said, boy, that background is my, the control point signs, the station signs I have from some old Conrail control points, replicas from the Conrail Historical Society. Those vision statements that Doug Watts got me, they hang on the wall proudly, and they're an interesting discussion piece, and they help provide some of the camaraderie for the OC. But on a video, which is going to be out there for posterity, forever, really.
Right.
It's one of those things I noticed in sort of a critical review, and I said, that just looks chintzy. There's a time and a place to talk about wall hangings and deck decor, and it's fun when you're just running trains on the layout with a group of guys. That's fine. But on a video where you want the focus to be the trains, you want the focus to be the layout, big reflective blue signs in the background don't really help that.
Yeah, sure. Oh, okay. I just wondered where you got the idea there and stuff, because it's kind of neat.
Yeah, just sort of a backdrop. And then, of course, I realized after the video started that the far end of it fell down. And so you could still see the desk back there. But I think that once, that was only when I was doing my little talk. And when I went back to just the trains, it was pretty well focused. So I think it was a success. I'll do it again next time, hopefully with a light blue sheet next time.
Yeah, that's kind of an oxymoron, Dave Abeles and little talk. Yeah, I don't.
At best.
All right.
That whole slow learning thing,
Yeah. Okay, so at around 28 minutes, so you had it dark for the first 28 minutes, and then the lights came on. Was it because you were operating at night and then you wanted to show people daylight operations, or how did that happen? Was that on purpose?
Yes. So one of the beauty of the way that Jack built the operating schedule on the Onondaga Cutoff is that it runs a 20 to 24/7 365 operation.
Right.
I mean, that's what trunkline railroading is. So Jack, being a rail service planner, built the operating schedule on the Onondaga Cutoff to replicate a real staging plan, essentially, how the railroad would work over 24 hours. With the double-ended staging, you can pretty much pick up where you left off at every given session, and everything's where it needs to be. There's no staging required except for switching locomotives around so you don't see the same engine twice.
Right, yeah, okay.
So what we did a week ago was run a portion of the schedule that was some of the overnight trains, and I just kept the lights on so that people could see what I was doing.
Okay.
And so this time around, we ran through some of the wee hours of the morning with the lights on just for video purposes. But this time we got to about 5 a.m. last time. And this time Jack said, well, let's just start with, TV6. And I said, okay. And, 5 in the morning in October, or, give or take, we didn't pick a specific day. I just said early fall, but 5 in the morning, there's just a little bit of blue light, in the real life. And so I just cracked the lights a little bit. So what you see there was pretty dark, but the lights were actually on about 25%. And we started there. And then as the fast clock went forward, and we went from 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. to 7 a.m., almost to 8 a.m., I brought the lights up accordingly with the sunrise so that the viewer got some of the experience that you get during an operating session where, the railroad night trains run with the lights off. Again, it's tough to do that with the simple camera that I've got, but it was pretty fun to do sort of the dawn light, that side light, the glow in the eastern sky, and then work up from that towards broad daylight mid-morning.
Okay.
Right.
Because they kind of, all right, cool. So how did you, okay, so you had an operating scheme, and so there would be time in between trains, and is that built in when if you were having a regular operating session, that time is already built in. So Jack was just following along on the schedule with using the 3-to-1 clock and the whole bit. That's why.
That's correct. And
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And we now he'll adjust things a little bit. For example, SEELX, which during the Facebook Live video, that came west with a filthy grungy SP SD40T-2, a fairly fresh SP B39-8, and then crusty but clean Denver and Rio Grande Western SD40T-2. Very similar to what you would see in the SP era on the Rio Grande. And SEEL ended up being a funnel for all sorts of westbound locomotives for offline connections. So Conrail used that train as sort of a catch-all to go west with all the empty cars in Selkirk. And they would just couple them all together and run it. And when they needed another train to move that tonnage, if it was more than 140 cars or whatever, in those days they would just gather up another 70 or 80, call an extra section, call it SEEL, and whatever Western Power had gathered in the yard from other inbound trains, they'd couple it together and send it west. So there was wild lash ups on that train on a routine basis on the Cutoff or on the actual Chicago line. And so we emulate that on the Cutoff. So that train was added just for viewer interest. We do run extra sections.
The run through power and all the variety was of noteworthy comment last time and this time. People were definitely talking about it. And I think a lot of people really enjoyed the variety of power.
Yeah, I agree, George. That's a good point. And to be honest, that's one of the reasons I chose to model this trunk line, the former New York Central water level route, over other trunk lines, say the PRR, for example, or the parts of the Erie Lackawanna that still exist under Conrail. One of the things about the Chicago line was that it was, it had the density. It was near and dear to me in my childhood, of course, but without the cab signals that they have on the PRR, where Conrail engines had to lead, I mean, without exception. So you might get a run through second or third in the lash up, but because it couldn't lead, they would routinely take that power off in Conway and turn the conscious and send it back west.
Right.
That's not the case on the Chicago line. It didn't matter whose it was. If it worked, it could lead. And so, I mean,
whatever you got, send it out.
Send it. And it's funny. So if some of the Conrail guys ever hear this podcast, this is Dave Todd McGill. He has a Facebook page. Neat guy, really nice guy. He's an ex-con, and his Facebook page is the Northeast Rail Fans Modelers and Railroaders or something like that. It's a page with 1,000 members or so, and pretty neat page. And he used to work out of Selkirk as a locomotive engineer on Conrail. And a bunch of his engineer and conductor friends that are either now on CSX or have moved on to other railroads. He himself is on Amtrak. They've been a real enthusiastic supporter of the OC because it brings back their memories from running out of Selkirk in the 90s. And they always say, send it. Like it's just, I guess that was a Conrail thing, this power sucks. This, everything's falling apart. Send it. And so it's become one of our little motifs here. I mean, you might have, 2 Morris Tananiri Alco. Send it. This train's only got 5. Send it. And it becomes sort of a joke during the operating sessions when they're here because, it's a lot of fun. You get some of the lingo, and then the radio conversations become downright comical. It's a lot of fun. A lot like the prototype.
Some guy coming up the grade and says, "I don't have enough power per ton. Send it anyway."
Send it. Send it. Be a test of your skills, buddy. Keep on going.
Really. And going down.
Yeah, exactly. More importantly, gravity has no friends.
So, in other words, basically what we did is we saw an actual hour on the layout of operations.
Right. You saw an hour in real time, and so you saw about 3 hours of Onondaga Cutoff through trains operating. The only thing that we would have changed, probably if there was more people here, is that in that time slot, we also have COSE, Columbus to Selkirk. And that's a train that actually makes a set out at Onondaga Yard. But it comes up the hill as a 45, 50, 55 car train out of offline from points west. It comes east into Onondaga and sets off 11, 12, 13 cars, puts his train back together, does his brake test, and this is all in the dark because it's at like 5 a.m., 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. And then he comes east. So for me to do all that while doing a Facebook Live video and walking over to Onondaga to make the couples and the uncouples and put things together with the brake test. It would have been neat on the radio to listen to, but it's just too much for me to try and do all that by myself.
I understand, but generally, basically, what people saw was a real-time hour of operations on the Onondaga Cutoff, on the Cutoff.
Correct. Roger that. Yep. And the wisdom keepers, I call them. This is Jack, Rich Wisniewski, who I think is very interesting, and some of Al Tillotson, Chris Lee. Nick Anchant, Alex Lang, all the guys that are sort of the wisdom keepers and that fill the management roles here on a regular basis during the train operating sessions. I have them on a group email right now. We've been discussing these Facebook Live videos and a lot of these ideas about putting it on the tripod and keeping it shorter. A lot of that was echoed by those guys, which has been really helpful.
You know what we need? So, what we need, George? We need wisdom keepers here at the old AML.
We do need wisdom keepers here at the old AML. I agree.
Yeah, we do, but then of course it would change the whole dynamic.
Well, let me know when you find some.
Yeah.
I got a question for you, Dave.
Yes. So
obviously Conrail succeeded, the glorious, wonderful monster that it was Penn Central. Does anyone ever rib you about buying Penn Central equipment and running on the layout? Because I know my brother, every time he walks into the hobby shop, there's a guy there, and he's always saying, "Oh, I got this," and he knows he's a Conrail modeler, and he says, "Oh, I got this awesome Penn Central stuff for you." And my brother just kind of walks away as fast as he can.
Yeah, one of the things that I had the privilege of being published by Tony Custer in his Model Railroad Planning magazine in 2018, and one of the things that I've long felt as a relative kid in the model railroad community in North Jersey. This is Perry Squire and Tony Custer and Ted Pamperin, David Olson. These are all people that have been in the hobby for 50 years or more. They've all written articles. They've all been in great model railroads. It's a really dynamic and talented group of model railroaders, and very well connected. A lot of them, they do the pro rail thing we've talked about. They've operated at La Mesa and all over the country, these different sessions. And it's a group of people I've always looked up to as a kid. So they sort of, their view of model railroading, their childhood was the 50s. It was the late 40s. It might have been the early 60s. So they remember, even the youngest of them grew up with C&O GP7s and F units as mainline power. That were well maintained and shiny, and the guys from the 40s, of course, they remember steam clearly, and it was a daily thing, and even in the 50s, and in Canada it lasted longer. But the idea is that there is a weight that comes with the expectation, I think, of what model railroading traditionally has been, which is guys running steam engines and modeling at best the transition era.
Yeah.
So as the relative kid in the crowd, there's been a lot of good-natured and some a little tense ribbing about Conrail and, oh, it's boring, and why would you waste your time and money on that? That's a waste. I mean, there was so much better back in the 50s. Oh, it's so much more interesting back in the 50s. And and black and white photography was great back then, but now there's digital cameras. Like,
I was going to say, thank God for color.
Brothers, and then there's a lot to be said for it. And I think that it took me some time. I definitely felt a responsibility to own, quote unquote, modern railroading. And that's the funny thing, is that 1994, there's two generations now that think that's the old stuff.
Yeah,
so
it's true.
It's all relative. It's very relative based on, who you're talking to. So, when you look at these guys and the local community, and they do beautiful work. They're gifted modelers. They're generally very good operators. But the only thing they hate worse than Conrail is Penn Central.
Everybody hates Penn Central.
I mean, and except for Conrail fans. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
I look at Penn Central. They had one of every kind of locomotive. They still had the almost every branch line, almost every little podunk town had a station and a depot. They had a lot of manual interlocking control. They had all kinds of cool signals. They were burdened with a crazy regulation structure. They were burdened with, a lot of route miles that didn't make much money. They had a lot of very unhappy relationships in management and in labor between the New York Central guys and the Pennsylvania guys. So there was too much for them to overcome, is what it came down to.
Yeah.
And it's a fascinating story. We talked about it on one of the podcasts. The Men Who Love Trains by Rush Loving Jr. Is a great book that talks about this story and brings you right up to the current day in about 2000, 2001 with the NS and CSX takeover of Conrail. But it goes through the whole history and how it all came together. Right. All the backroom deals and the drinking bourbon on the business train. And this guy was just a great reporter and has a lot of the stories. So there's a fellow named Jim Homoki, another local modeler who's a little bit older than me. He models Penn Central and CNJ in like 1974, which is pretty much the pits of things in the Northeastern United States.
That was about as bad as it got.
It was about as bad as it got, but it's his childhood and he remembers it fondly. And so it was him. He came to an OC session and he says, Dave, it's so nice to see somebody else with some more modern equipment. Had a lot of fun. Love the double deck design and the way you and Jack run things. It's great. The one thing I got to say, I'm vice president of the Penn Central Technical and Historical Society. Conrail in 1994 had a lot of Penn Central stuff, and you didn't really seem to have much. Are there plans to add some? And I'm reading this email, and the bell goes off in my brain. Ding! It's like, oh my God, he's totally right. Like I've got like one or two pieces of Penn Central equipment. And this is about 7 years ago, the timing of it was perfect because it was right when these new manufacturers, Exact Rail, Tangent, some of these Spring Mills Depot were coming out with gorgeous Conrail equipment. And I was able to go in and take a bunch of Tangent, Exact Rail and Scale Trains cars and hand them over to my buddy Lenny Harlows, who's a professional weathering guy. And he created some unbelievable ghosted and weathered predecessor railroad stuff, EL, Penn Central. And so now we've got plenty of Penn Central representation, and it does draw the chagrin of a couple of the old school guys. Look at that. That car shouldn't even be allowed to run. It's such a mess. Yep. Yep. But guess what, guy? It did.
It did, and I own it.
And I was just going to say,
it's part of the joy. I think it's part of the joy of the whole thing. It's, to each their own. Everybody in this hobby is going to do it the way they see fit. And for me, I really do try and stick to the prototype. I want to make it look like the photographs you would see in a book about Conrail from the 90s.
So who's Lenny Harlow now? That's a name I haven't heard you mention before.
I thought I mentioned it with you, but maybe I didn't.
Well, you know what? The problem is, you don't talk that much, so it's hard to stay awake while you're. so you may have mentioned it, but I may have dozed off at some point.
That's true.
You probably did, but you've also mentioned 1,000 other things. And
hang on, I got to turn back to the last chapter of my notes.
Yeah, exactly.
So Lenny is a fella, and just luck of the draw, he lives in Phillipsburg, New Jersey, about 20 miles from me. Not even 20 miles from me. And he actually drives for you. You said Phillipsburg, New Jersey. Phillipsburg. Correct.
You said that with your New Jersey slur.
Oh yes, I apologize. Phillipsburg. Yes.
Phillipsburg.
Right across the river from Easton, Pennsylvania.
Okay, and the home of Phillipsburg, New Jersey, is the home of anybody?
Joe's Cheesesteaks.
No. Guess again? The birthplace of, well, not the birthplace, but the home of, the childhood home of, anybody? Hello? Anybody in the audience? Oh, yes, sir. You, sir. Kaylee Zhang.
No kidding.
Oh, yes, that's right.
That explains why she's in Jersey as much as she is. Interesting, or at least partly. Great. Oh, well, Kaylee, hope you hear this. That's fantastic. I didn't know we had that in common. Fantastic.
There you go. All right. So anyways, he lives in Phillipsburg.
Yeah, he's a nice guy. I met him through the internet. He got in touch with me about the Onondaga Cutoff at one point. Love your layout. Would love to come see it. And it turns out he has worked with John Bjornson, who's famous for the Southern Tier Models weathering group.
Never heard
So
of
they've got a
them.
Facebook page. Yeah, they do world-class work. And it's John Bunsen he lives in Florida now, but I believe he used to be from New Jersey. And he's a professional weathering guy. It's what he does full time.
Really?
He creates weather. I mean, and the stuff he comes out with, I mean, it's all custom detailed, custom painted, and custom weathered. And it's amazing stuff. Absolutely amazing stuff. It gives me a lot to look up to.
Southern Tier Model Railroad Club? Is that what you're talking about?
Now, Southern Tier Models.
Southern Tier
There's
Model.
there's a Facebook page. I know there's a website.
All right. Now, George, I'm telling you, this hobby's way bigger than anybody realizes.
Oh yeah, of that we have no doubt.
Southern Tier Model Works. There you
That
go.
should be the guy.
Love trains for 60 years. Wow. So there you go. Okay, so there's another John. How'd you say his last name?
I don't know how to say it properly. I say Bunsen,
Okay.
but I don't know if that's correct or not. Lenny just calls him John, and he was sort of a mentor to Lenny. Lenny's my age. He's 40. I think he's 43, 44 right now. And he's got a couple of little kids of his own. He lives out there in Phillipsburg, and I've been putting decoders in locomotives for the OC. And he said, "Hey, we both have little kids, which means not much money. Would you trade some decoder and ditch light installations on my engines for some weathering on your stuff?" And I said, "Yeah." I took one look at what he was talking about. And I said, "Holy moly, this is different. This is next level weathering. This is the kind of stuff where you literally, unless you look at the Katie coupler, you can't tell that it's not the real thing."
Right.
And again, I like having everything weathered on my railroad. I think it adds to the plausibility. But my weathering is something I do. I enjoy it, but I'm certainly not a master. It's something I'm still learning a lot about. I play with it. I have a good time. But Lenny will take a picture, and he'll strip the paint off a commercial car. He'll decal it for what he's trying to do. He'll paint over that. He'll fade that coat, sand off some of it, decal it again, and you end up with these unbelievable ghosted models, which Conrail was famous for. Conrail was loaded with that stuff because everything was from a predecessor railroad.
Right.
So Lenny's a guy who's he's been a big supporter of the OC, and I feel lucky to call him a friend. He's a good dude.
Is there anywhere on the internet to find Lenny?
Lenny Harlos it's a Facebook. He has his own Facebook page, and he's sort of loosely affiliated with Southern Tier at this point because John Bunsen is Southern Tier Models, and when he moved to Florida, I'm guessing that's when he retired.
Yeah.
He took the business with him, and so Lenny does stuff for him and with him, but it's sort of a loose affiliation at this point.
Okay.
But Lenny Harlos, he certainly has a Facebook page, and I'm sure he'd be open to talking to you through that.
All right. Cool. Just it's interesting to find all these people. I found the Southern Tier Model Works page, and you just keep looking and find. I'm telling you, this hobby is way bigger than anybody realizes.
Everywhere you look, there's something new to discover.
Everywhere you sing, every single time I do one of these podcasts, I learn something. This hobby is going to absolutely explode, and we're going to all be covered in model railroad goo.
I love that saying.
Yeah, me too. That's one of my favorites.
It's fantastic.
Explode.
That's right. It's right up there with how I sold my column to Model Railroader. Look what I did while I was gluing my finger to my eyelid.
I can see you walking up to somebody and saying, "Explain to me how we explode."
Yeah, explain. I'm telling you, because every time I talk to somebody, and like this is, you're talking about Lenny and John, and these guys are excellent weathering guys, and like I've never even heard of these guys because we've all been living in our basements and our bomb shelters for the last 80 years.
Yeah.
With our dozen friends, our dozen. I mean, look at your story, Dave. Up until 5 years ago, it was you and Jack.
Me, Jack, my buddy Mark, who has been a little more distant lately. He's not as into the whole social media thing at all. And so, as time's gone on, having kids at home, and George, you understand, like you have a little kid and your priorities change. And sometimes people without little kids have a little harder time staying in touch just because they're still available to do stuff. And the stuff I'm doing, and it almost always involves the kids.
Yep.
But yeah, there was a handful of us, and that was it, Lionel. I mean, we would struggle to get 8 people for an operating session.
Yeah.
Because it was just people contacts at NJ Transit. Once Rich and Al Tillotson started to come, it was a little more fluid. We were able to make it happen a little better, but it definitely took some doing until Rich introduced me to Jerry Dietzick, and then away we went. It was great.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So what do the wisdom, man? I don't know that, George. I think that's a slippery slope for the AML Nation to have wisdom keepers.
Yeah, I know. I'm not sure we should be looking down that path right now.
Yeah, I don't see.
I think it's more trouble than it's worth.
Yeah.
Well, chances are you've already got him.
Yeah.
I think I mean, certainly the Overlord is the grand poobah, and you've got the moderately agitated mailboy whose picture on the website, by the way, is freaking hilarious.
Yeah.
That's moderately agitated, all right. I don't know.
I was going to say it's majorly agitated.
I think it's majorly agitated. George is right. But you've got Kaylee, you've got Adam, George here. I mean, you're the people that do the interviewing help create the nation that I think has been so remarkable about AML. And there really is. There's no layout per se. There's a gathering once a year, except crazy years like this. Hopefully there's something that can happen. Right. But there's Springfield. There's a few things, but this is one of those. 15 years ago, no, you couldn't tell anybody that the AML would be a nation.
Absolutely.
And you keep saying it, Lionel. It's bigger than anybody expected. The hobby. Well, AML is a big reason for that, and that your support of My Little Railroad here is, man, I can't tell you how much it means to me. Like I when you say, "Oh, hey Dave, would you mind talking about your OC?" You should talk to Kristen sometime, because she has to pull me off the ceiling. I get so excited. I mean, you know me, I'm a man of few words.
Exactly, that's the only problem. And we still haven't done our chat yet about remote dispatching or the visit from Jason Tron and the Rapido guys.
Nope. We can talk about that stuff. We've got, more stuff to talk about too with transit, of course, and there's a lot of moving parts. But it's the beautiful thing is we got time. Thank God.
There is always going to be something.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. Always. Okay. So so you've been it's been 24 hours roughly. What are the wisdom keepers saying about last night?
Well, they got less suggestions for how to improve it, which is always a good sign.
Well, that's a good start.
Rich says, Dave, this went great. It was, I really, really happy with the way it turned out. And he says, you should have panned around with that final train. And I was like, well, yeah, I tried to. And then the freaking tripod handle hit the edge of the layout, and there was no way to do it without picking the camera up and then making a big mess. So it's, you sort of, as you go through these things, you learn it's a curveball no matter how you cut it.
Yeah.
But one of the comments was that, like next to the farm, maybe there should be crickets or cows mooing, like a soundtrack. And one of the things, I got to Tony Cusser's layout a bunch of times to operate now, which has been a real pleasure. It's just a really world-class operation. And one of the things he has in one of his towns, he has a little CD player on a loop beneath the layout with its own little speaker system, and it turns on with the layout power, and it just plays bird sounds, like birds tweeting.
Right.
And this is a part of the layout that's away from the yard. It's away from the chaos. It's away from a lot of the other operation. It's sort of back in its own corner. And when you come and sit for a meet, you've got a steam engine. So steam engines, when they're sitting there, don't make a lot of noise at all. You hear the occasional hiss, safety valve, and that's about it, So you're sitting there and the sound decoder calms down, and all you hear is the occasional hiss, and you're sitting there and with timetable train order, you can wait 2-3 hours for a meet sometimes, like model hours. And in some cases, things get out of control. You're just stuck there for the rest of the session. And so he's put a CD player with the sounds of the woods under the layout someplace, and it's just loud enough for you to hear when you stop there.
Right.
And I thought to myself, when I first went there, I said, great. I said, what a neat idea. Well, a couple wisdom keepers over the last 24 hours, I said, since you're not carrying the camera around, it would be really cool if you had sounds of a dairy farm at night, or even just some crickets or some peepers, like, playing at the farm so that people could hear it like as background noise on the video. I said, boy, that's a great idea. So that was a good suggestion. I got to take a look and see what sort of products are out there for that. But I think that'd be a lot of fun to do that at a couple different spots, where you're away from Onondaga Yard, to have peepers or birds, depending on the time. We'll see how it comes together. But I thought that was a good idea. People seem to like the rail fanning aspect of it. There wasn't too much talking, but when you look at Facebook videos in general, Facebook Live or any live video, there's not a lot of sitting, staring at empty tracks.
No. And
there was a lot of sitting, staring at empty tracks last night.
Yeah.
Because that's just the nature of things on a model railroad. If there's no one, if the cameraman can't turn the camera and have a monologue between trains, you're going to be looking at empty tracks. It's just that's just the nature of the beast. On a live video anyway.
Yeah.
You could splice things in if it was recorded. So there's some, I think there's room for improvement there. I'm not really sure what the pathway forward would be, but I think there's an opportunity there to make it a little more interesting. I'd be open to suggestions on that, of course.
I think I like the first. I think I like the first one a bit better because I like seeing the whole layout and everything like that. I mean, I got what you were doing last night, and I thought it was done really, really well. But I was kind of like, after 5 minutes of looking at the screen, I'm kind of going, maybe I'll go make a sandwich.
Right. And that's I want to make sure it's compelling enough that it holds people to it. And so one of the ideas Jack had was, maybe there's a way for Facebook Live to have 2 or 3 cameras at once. And then people can toggle, almost like a Zoom meeting online or Microsoft Teams. They could toggle to CP282 and they could toggle to the farm and they could toggle to CP277 or whatever.
Yeah. That's a cool idea.
I love the idea, but I haven't figured out how to do it yet. That's the question: is how do you make that happen?
Well, you could do it on Zoom and direct people to it, because all they need is either all they need is the link to the meeting. And I mean, like something I've always wanted to do here, but I just never get around to it because I'm not particularly energetic. I'm lazy. I don't know. I don't know.
You do a lot of these podcasts to be lazy. I don't think lazy. 11,000 steps a day, my friend, is not lazy. Perseverant.
I think, I got stamina. In hockey. I was like, I can stay out for a couple of shifts, but I was not the fastest guy on the ice. I think my problem is I micromanage. I was talking to somebody about that today. And, for me, I got to kind of understand how things work. So my immediate suggestion, because you just said that, and because we just started Zoom on with the podcast, give the Patreon members a place to go and chat, is you could actually put up on the you could get yourself a Zoom account, put up on the Facebook. I don't know if it would work either. No, I think it would work. You could put up I don't know, George, we'd have to figure this out, but I think it's doable.
Oh, yeah, I think we could do something with that.
I think it's doable. Yeah. So anyways, you know what I would say about the difference between what you did last night and trying to replicate rail fanning is when you're rail fanning, the time between trains is fun because you're usually there with at least 1 or 2 buddies and you're standing there talking and shooting the crap and having a sandwich or a beer or whatever you're doing. And with the way it was last night, while you had pretty much replicated exactly what rail fanning was, we missed that element of the standing there. It was it was a little bit more difficult, except it was a short period of time, so it wasn't difficult to wait for the next train. Did any of that make any sense?
It did.
Yeah,
and it actually resonates with me because it's a good point. I mean, rail fanning. Of course, we've all done it by ourselves now and again. But I don't know, 50-1, I'd prefer going with anybody rather than just myself.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of waiting and it's a lot of fun to talk to people, especially people you're close to as you're waiting or people you want to get to know better. So see, this would be a lot of fun if me or Rich or Jack or a handful of the quote unquote wisdom keepers or anybody else could stand next to me and do the same exact thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then you have the radio up over the top, which we had, And instead of me talking to the camera and getting interrupted, it's like when you're rail fanning and the scanner barks, everybody stops mid-sentence. All the experienced rail fans stop. It used to drive my wife nuts. We'd be driving around in the car, I'd have the scanner on, and she'd be talking to me, the scanner would burp, and I'd say, up, 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 and I pull my hand up. So this goes on for a few months, and at one point she's like, I can't stand that. I'm like, no, when the scanner talks, that means the train's coming. It's a good thing. She's like, I don't care about that. She's like, but you cut me off every time the scanner talks. I said, well, you don't know when the trains are coming. The scanner does. And oh man, that did not go over well. That did not.
I can't imagine so. No.
No. My wife's wonderful, but she has her limits, and I pushed the limits that day. I can tell you.
You might be the bravest man I ever met.
Well, or the dumbest. So, I think that there's a lot to be said. Once we can get somebody else down here, even if it's just me and Ted, my son, my 5-year-old son.
Yeah.
It's just because I could see him saying, Dad, what's next? What's coming? Well, that's a very natural discussion between a father and a son at the railroad tracks,
Yeah, exactly.
So there's something to be said. Well, we'll have to see. Maybe an opportunity next time to involve a little bit more of that. And then, of course, the other side is the Zoom approach, if not a Zoom account, which I actually have a Zoom account, but I don't know if I'd be able to get that. Because one thing I love about the Facebook is that you can text in, and it's there for posterity. And I love that you can see who's there, and there's a count of who's watching and who's not. Like there's a lot of ways to know what's going on that Zoom doesn't provide.
Right.
But if you could pipe a Zoom broadcast through Facebook.
Yeah, that's going to take some ciphering.
I'm gonna effort that.
Yeah, let's effort that.
Yeah, I'm gonna effort that.
All right, awesome.
You know what I realized while we were talking about this?
What's that?
Dave is virtually modeling rail fanning.
Yes, he is.
It's a virtual model of rail fanning. That's what you're doing.
That's true.
So the only thing it was missing is that standing around with your buddies, kicking the dirt and going, because it's easy to pass the time. So that's what and it's just like building a model railroad. Your first video, your first attempt at virtual rail fanning was basically a smash hit. But it's like, what would you do next? And the thing that was missing, just like weathering on a model railroad, was that standing around with your buddies, kicking the dirt and having a couple of wobbly pops and all that stuff. Other than that, it was a smash hit. So that's good feedback, and I think that there's some meat there. And the best part about that suggestion is that it really is doable. I mean, even if there's just a cell phone, a speakerphone next to the thing, and Lionel and Dave shoot the shit while we're waiting for trains to come by. Yeah, exactly. Now, I got to write that down. This is on our free channel, and what time?
Top shelf with the peanut butter.
Top shelf with the peanut butter.
Top shelf with the peanut butter.
You know what happens, Dave, when a minor leaguer gets a goal? When a minor leaguer scores a goal, he gets his wings. How does that go, George?
When someone drops a bomb, a minor leaguer gets his wings.
Yeah.
Dave, you're helping the hockey world. You're all good to go.
No, fair enough. I know a little bit about it, but you guys are obviously more expertise than I've got with it. But,
I don't know anything.
A little bit.
Fair enough.
A little bit. We kept trying to get him to do the ending, and he kept going, "Oh yeah, I got this, no problem." He had no idea what he had. No, I don't think he's ever listened to the podcast.
Yeah, actually, that was my first time.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I'd be a very interesting full-time interview.
Yeah, you might be.
Not uninteresting like certain other wisdom keepers on the OC.
Yeah, exactly. Jack or Rich Winiski is a great guy, and I don't know if he's listening to this. He tends to listen occasionally. Great guy, fun guy to talk to, but oh my God, the man is just not interesting at all. Period. End of sentence.
No.
Poor Rich.
Paint dry. Oh my God. I'd rather be cleaning out I'd rather be cleaning out a paint sink roller with my best hockey shirt than listening to that guy. I love you, Rich, buddy. I know you. You know I'm kidding you. You know I'm teasing you, Rich. It's just
he's a world-class guy that can he can run with the sarcasm. He's very good at it. He's very good at it. So no worries.
All right. Well, I think we killed another 54 minutes. We're going to add this. We glued this to the pre-show part of the. We have a two-part. This is cool. And we're going to release this. Today is April the 27th. You're either on. Well, you're probably not on your way to work because, well, George, you might be.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. You're on your way to Cornwall, George, while you're listening to this. Have you listened to one yet while you're driving around that you've been on?
Yeah, I have. Hug It Out too.
Okay, and what did you think listening to yourself?
Oh, I thought amazing.
It's important to be honest in life, Lionel. You know that.
Honesty is not my forte.
Yeah. hey, we should get Dave to give out the email address. Not, George. George, can you give out the email address?
I certainly can. I even have a special Northeast edition tonight.
Oh.
So if you want to write to us by the medium of email, you can contact us at modellerslife. That's modeler with one L, like Pennsylvania, and not two L's, like Philadelphia. modellerslife@gmail.com.
Well, there you go. And we have a website, amodellerslife.com. And if you go there and you scroll down, if you're on your phone and you just scroll down a little bit, you'll see a picture of Bruce, the moderately agitated male boy, in a very agitated state. And if you just click on that picture, you'll be able to automatically send us an email. And you can tell us all about it, everything you think. And the other thing we got to tell you about is we have a Patreon for $5 a month. You get all the Tuesday shows. And Kaylee Zhang, whose hometown is Phillipsburg, New Jersey, she calls it the Antics Channel because that's that's the page. That's the channel. Tuesdays is our fun day where we do all kinds of stuff. Sometimes serious. More than likely, we're just reading posts or newsletter or viewer mail. And the other thing we want to tell you, if you are a Patreon member, you can go to our Zoom. We have a virtual chat room on Zoom, which is available to all the Patreon members. So that's a fun thing to do. We've been doing that for a couple of weeks now, and it seems to be quite popular. People are meeting each other and having a grand old time. So that's pretty much it.
Right on.
Yeah, exactly. Dave?
Yes, sir.
You think you can handle the ending?
I am never going to say, sure, again.
So remember, a Modeler's Life podcast is considered marginally adequate by 6 out of 10
Penn Central modelers.
And now it's time for the New Jersey Transit Elevator Escalator Report. Take it away, Dave. Dave?
Good morning, everybody. Westfield westbound, just out of service in the last hour or so. The vendor's en route. Take a look at that one. Absecons back in service this morning. Trenton Transit Center number 4 escalator. This one, we're not really sure exactly what happened. Nice Vision shows a bunch of people on it. It just sort of stops the brake engage. So I think we'll just be a quick reset, but we'll check it this morning. Union Center Island is still out for its midlife overhaul. Montclair State University number 2 is out. That one's the parking deck responsibility, so they'll put it back in service this afternoon, hopefully. And Newark Penn Station elevator number 37 is still out for its door replacement. We're not real thrilled with the vendor performance on that guy, but it'll come around here like everything else. So I'll keep you posted.
It's another Lincoln Homer.